In the past 2 years I've lived with my partners, we've shared a lot of stories and shows that the others would never have gotten around to watching on our own. For me and my wife, that means her watching Kill la Kill, Kamen Rider, while I watch Number 6, and sports shows like Haikyuu and Kuroko's Basketball. Shows that I enjoy well enough, but honestly, they're not in my wheelhouse. I'm not really a big sports fan, but I love spending time with my wife. I want to share the things that bring her joy. Recently, she wanted to share Yuri on Ice. The show came out in 2017 and I've heard plenty about it. I've heard about the kiss, I've heard about the failed movie attempt. For the entirety of my life, it was just the yaoi bait show. It was a show where people were hotly contesting on whether the two characters were actually a couple or not, or whether the kiss was real or not. And I had no interest. But again, I love my wife, and with the shows that she shared with me recently, I was willing to give it a chance. I loved it. Yuri on Ice is less sports anime than love story. Now, you might have misheard me. What you might have heard is that ice skating is not a sport. What I'm saying is that the competition in the show is not the point. To say ice skating is not a sport would discredit the intense amount of physical training and execution needed to even participate. Part of the reason the older skaters lament their age in the show is because of how much wear and tear their bodies go through for the sake of these performances. Especially with Victor. The show likes to remind us that everyone is not getting younger, that everyone is getting older, and that their time on the ice is finite. Especially with scenes where Yuri pokes Victor's thinning spot. Yes, Yuri competes in a tournament. Yes, Yuri's goal is to win each level of the competition in order to advance to the grand finals. Yes, Yuri's goal is to win the final competition and redeem his failure from the start of the series. But the competition is a means to an end. It's a vehicle framing the story and keeping it moving forward. It's just the plot, not the theme. Yuri on Ice is an essay on love, one that focuses on how love changes and inspires us. The skaters aren't obstacles for Yuri to overcome. He's doing that plenty well to himself. The other skaters are here to be in conversation with what love means, and it uses a sport that isn't just competitive, but performative and driven by self-expression in order to do that. But you don't have to take my word for it. The show says it literally several times throughout the entire series.
あれ今年のテーマのボード勝木選手
どれぐらいあるかですか。
ユーリ早く火鍋食べに行こうよ。
今年のグランプリシリーズで僕がテーマにするのは愛です。
スケートから離れて頭の中に浮かぶのは2つの L、 ライフとラブだ。
安い愛や恋ではなくて、ビクトルとの絆や家族や地元に対する微妙な気持ち。
彼はたくさんの出会いの中、愛の入り口を感じたのではないかと思います。
ようやく自分の周りにある愛のようなものに気づくことができました。
自分を支える愛は何なのか探している時こそ人間は輝きます。
強くなった僕をグランプリファイナルの金メダルで証明します。
When we meet Yuri, between the stress of the finals, his dog dying, he's completely broken. He's hiding in the bathroom, sobbing his heart out to his parents, while some kid kicks the door, yelling at him. Yuri is on the verge of quitting something that he loves. Then we get a time skip, and he returns to Japan. We meet his childhood friend Yoko, and we find out how they both came to adore a skater named Victor Nikiforov. I'm gonna apologize right now for any names that I mispronounce. I am historically very bad at pronouncing names. That adoration blossoms into passion for both of them, though in different ways. While Yuko took over her family's ice skating rink, Yuri went on to compete internationally, even becoming a town hero. They've both turned their childhood passion into careers, but only Yuko seems to be happy with where she's at in life. So, in order to get out of his funk, Yuri tries to recapture the same childhood joy he felt when he started, the same passion that inspired him to compete by recreating Victor's routine. And he recreates it perfectly. Every jump and motion shows how much he studied Victor, as well as his dedication to ice skating. He's recreating the routine of a star performer, one filled with incredibly difficult techniques interposed with Victor's actual routine, just to hammer home how in sync they are, even though they haven't met. And the only person he's sharing it with is his best friend, or so he thinks.
ゆうちゃんのこと。
アクセルルーツループ ずいぶん会ってないから大きくなったでしょ。
If you knew nothing about Yuri on Ice going in, you might think Yuko was being set up as the default love interest, especially after that flashback sequence. It's natural for the audience to see two characters who have a history together and assume that the connection will evolve into something romantic. And to his credit, Yuri seems to have something of a lingering crush on his childhood friend, remarking on how he looked up to her as children and how she's still as cute as ever. But the story heads that off by introducing Yuko's children, triplets who have inherited their parents' love for ice skating. And that's parents, plural, because their father, Takeshi, is still around. He's the guy who used to bully Yuri when they were little, but he's as much Yuri's friend as Yuko is now. The entire family loves and supports Yuri. It's not quite enough. He ruefully admits to himself that he's been using skating as a distraction while away. Another hint that he did have feelings for Yuko at some point. He's not bitter, he's just empty, and he's left wondering what is it gonna take in order to stand on his own.
あれ虫氷から
That's when he finds out that Yuko's triplets posted a secret recording of his performance online. The video goes viral, and everyone who's plugged into the world of competitive skating sees it, including Victor. Watching Yuri perform his routine is enough to convince him to fly down to Japan and become his coach. That's the launching point for everything that follows. This is where love begins to change, not just for Yuri, but someone else we've just met, Yurio.
ロシアからはユーリ・プリセツキー。シニアデビューでいきなりファイナル進出の15歳。
Yurio is everything Yuri isn't. He's loud, ambitious, and technically prolific, a veritable genius who will go on to be the first skater ever to win the championship in his debut season. He was inspired by Victor as well, and the first act of the story pits the two against each other. Yuri, who is meek, non-confrontational, and happy to let others make decisions for him, has to keep Victor from being swept back to Russia by the loud, angry suitor. As an aside, I love how one of the first things that Yurio does when he lands down in Japan is buy a tiger shirt. He goes, "Oh, it's so cool!" And then he posts a selfie on Instagram with it, which is how his coach finds out that he went looking for Victor. Throughout the series, we'll see that one of Yurio's biggest weaknesses is that he doesn't have a lot of life experience. So just him getting outside of his dedicated ice rink and pulling in this single shirt is a show of how even just going outside to a new area has helped him incorporate just a little bit of something else into his personhood. But more on that later. With how different both Yuris are, Victor gets the idea to assign each of them a routine based on the opposing ideals of love, Eros and Agape. Whereas Eros is the physical, sometimes sexual side of love, Agape is the worldly, empathetic side of love. Eros is surface level attraction, the other focuses on the emotional connection. One is loud and seen, strutting around like a peacock, and the other is quiet, sometimes hidden. From the onset, Victor challenges both of them to reflect and consider who they are and what they want. And it's through both of these characters, Yuri and Yurio, Eros and Agape, that Yuri on Ice wants to discuss love, how love is expressed, and what love looks like, so that by the end of it, there's no question about whether Yuri and Victor are in a relationship. And since Yuri's the main protagonist, let's start with Eros. Yuri's short program is choreographed to the tune of On Love, Eros. And it's not just for the sake of subversion, having the shy, self-conscious character act like a playboy. In Lady Aeneas, the importance of food in Yuri on Ice, she hits the nail on the head with how Yuri's love of Katsudon is used as the metaphor for Yuri's identity, as well as an expression of his love. It's not an uncommon narrative trope, as covered by Sarah Moon's essay covering the same, for she loves to cook and she loves to eat. But the symbolism I'm most interested in exploring is the routine itself, and how it shows Yuri's passion, his emotional desire to keep Victor to himself, even as the people around them clamor for Victor to return to skating. Eros tends to be at its strongest at the start of a relationship. Everything's new and exciting. There's so much to explore, try, and you're hungry for more, just like discovering a new favorite food. And this plays to Yuri's strength as a skater. While practicing the routine, Victor points out that while Yuri has struggled with his executions, he can make up for a lack of technical skill on performance. And Eros embodies that in full. Eros is a very clumsy love. It's love at first sight, love that clouds the mind. For the Greeks, it was a type of madness that clouded the mind of good judgment. But you don't care, because it's exciting. Yuri's passion is his great equalizer. With it, he's able to turn a routine created by someone else and make it his own. It takes trial and error, trying on Victor's voice as a performer, discarding what doesn't work and finding something that fits him better. Even using a hand-me-down costume from Victor becomes another twist in how Yuri speaks with his own voice. In fact, it's even the exact same costume Victor is wearing when Yuri saw him skate for the first time. And each time we watch his performance, Yuri grows. From the time that Yuri was a kid, he hasn't changed. His friends tell us about his habits of over-practicing and constantly warming up when he's nervous. We see these habits continued throughout the series, usually in cutaways during the other skaters' performances. But as Yuri refines his arrows, his confidence grows and his habits change. Even Victor remarks that this is a Yuri he's never seen before. And that's because Yuri re-examines his passion after watching all of the other skaters he meets along the way. Take, for example, the skater that he inspired, Kenjiro. I love Kenjiro. He's got this little pop music that he dances to. It's almost like a Grease style type of music. He's just dancing, having a fun time. He's from his local high school skating club, and he just adores Yuri. Whenever Yuri starts to self-deprecate himself, he pushes back. He loved Yuri's early performances. He geeks out over one of Yuri's earliest costumes, a costume Yuri thought was completely cringe when he saw Kenjiro wearing an homage to it. This leads to Victor telling Yuri off. How can he motivate himself if he can't motivate other people? And it's important because Kenjiro looks at Yuri the way Yuri looked at Victor. Yuri is wearing a costume that Victor used to wear. Kenjiro is wearing a costume that Yuri used to wear. That cringe costume holds an important piece of Yuri's history. It's a symbol for the original spark of passion that made him want to compete and perform. It's that same initial love he tried to recapture by practicing Victor's routine. There's a lot of things we grow up with and discard later because we think of them as relics of an era when we didn't know better. But those things captured our adoration for a reason, and it's important to honor and cherish the joy it brought us and the people we became because of it. Contrast Kenjiro with Kristoff.
ユーリなんで俺も呼んでくれなかったの
He's nearly as old as Victor, and his entire goal has been trying to get Senpai to notice him. It's true. It's true. He wants Victor back on the ice because he wants to prove he can beat Victor. It's a fantasy he's been chasing ever since he was in the Juniors League. But since Victor isn't competing, he places his rivalry on Yuri, even declaring that mature Eros is his speciality. Indeed, Eros is commonly tied to the portrayal of sex, and given how Kristoff and Yuri finish their routines with flushed, heavy breathing, it's easy to infer the connection. But Kristoff exudes sex in a way that Yuri doesn't. He flaunts it every chance he gets, and I love that for him. Where Yuri invites Victor to follow, using the feminine movements he learned from his dance instructor, Kristoff struts around, showing everything, leaving nothing to the imagination. He calls Yuri's Eros innocent Eros, but that's purely on a physical side. It lacks the emotional depth that Yuri and Victor have with each other. It lacks the emotional depth in which Yuri chooses to express himself. While yes, Yuri doesn't have a lot of experience, it comes from a place of deep earnestness to keep Victor by his side, not just as competition, but as a friend, as a partner. And so, Kristoff feels like he's missing something, because he has. He's missed his shot at competing with Victor.
クリス迎えに来たぞいつも早すぎだよ
Now, I know I said Eros is commonly tied to sex, but what about when it isn't? When I was writing this, one of the ideas I kept coming back to was how Yuri's Eros, how his fixation on Victor in particular, is symbolic of his love for skating, but that's not true. We know this because the series brings in Pichit, the skater from Thailand. Pichit is like an autistic YouTuber. Hey, he has something he loves dearly and wants to share what he loves with the world. He wants to win the competition, but his goal is to star in an ice show and bring more of his countrymen into the sport because he just loves skating that freaking much. Everything Victor does is coated with his love for skating. He's competing, and yet his first thought is always to make sure he's enjoying himself. And one of the ways he does that is by skating to his favorite song from his favorite ice skating musical, The King and the Skater. It reminds me of the skater who did her routine to Moonlight Densetsu, which was beautiful and such a joy to watch, and I love it when people wear their love on their sleeves. In fact, Fidget's performance is so much fun, Yuri finds himself remembering why he's competing and takes a piece of that for himself to improve his own routine.
Okay.
Passion is such a powerful thing, and yet it's a really fragile one too. After Yuri debuts his Eros routine on the national level for the first time, he is in first place going into the free routine. His nerves are a wreck. Not just the day before, he was the single most confident skater in the rink, but now that he's in the lead and everyone else is catching up to him, he's about to fail. Victor has to shock him out of his funk in order to bring him back. Yuri, devastated that Victor would ever even joke about something like that, claps back. All he wants is for Victor to have confidence in him, to be by his side and support him, to give honest reassurance and not some cheap, manipulative trick. This is the backside to Eros. This is the unconditional love that Yuri is asking for from his coach. It's not hype up, it's not deep passion, just honest trust. The two reconcile, and Yuri manages to get some small revenge by poking that spot where Victor's hair is thinning. They've had their first fight, but they made up and they moved on, and their bond is stronger because of it. And it's with that increased trust that Yuri is able to pull off his free skate and place. Unlike a certain other Russian skater, Georgie is the reflection to this problem. His girlfriend dumped him, and now he's pining to win her back. But rather than talking to her like Yuri and Victor did, he incorporates his pain into his performance. It's a damn good performance too, showcasing how much he's hurting and the wrath he feels for being wronged, evoking the sorceress from Sleeping Beauty to cast a wrathful curse, only to completely turn around in the freestyle routine by trying to play the charming prince who comes to his lady's rescue. The result? His ex leaves in disgust. Georgie's let the madness of his own Eros take over, and it's ruined any possible chance of a reconciliation, even one where they could have remained friends. Something I think would have been possible considering she still showed up to watch him.
アーニャ
アーニャ逃げないで君を守るのは私だ
フリー見忘れた
We're only human. Anger and wrath are both valid forms of passion, and sometimes we need outlets to boil it off so we don't hurt the people we care about. But when we let those feelings fester, when we don't take the time to have real conversations about them, they drag us down. Georgie was doing so well, but his performance ends up putting everyone off. They can feel how spiteful it is, and even his attempt at showing how much he still cares about his ex-girlfriend comes across as incredibly creepy. All of this culminates in the finals. It doesn't matter how much you love what you're doing, whether it's art or relationships, at some point you're going to hit a wall, one where you don't have enough experience to progress on your own. So then, what do you do when passion alone is not enough? To find out, we're going to need to explore the other half, proposed at the very start of the show, Agape. As I said earlier, Yuri-O is everything Yuri isn't. His journey for love is also different, critiqued on by a different set of skaters. Yuri-O starts as a prolific genius, someone everyone has their eyes on for his professional debut. He's already gotten a fan club that puts little kitty ears on him, and apparently can suss him out by smell alone. Everyone loves his flawless performances. Everyone except Yuri-O himself.
いられる時間が短いんだ今利用できるもんは全部突っ込んで絶対勝つ
Yuri-O aced his juniors competition and no one could compete. But once he competes against Yuri at the Hot Springs town, he finds that he's lacking in his performance. And he holds himself to a higher standard, constantly pushing and improving to do better. Because of that, he feels nothing for anyone who fails, as seen when he tells Yuri to hurry up and retire in the opening scenes.
有利は2人もいらない才能ない奴はさっさと引退しろバカ
It's this lack of empathy that makes Agape so hard for him to grasp. At first, he thinks he has the answer, because he remembers how much he cherishes his grandfather. But it's not enough. He's still so self-conscious about his technical routine that he completely forgets his grandfather and loses to Yuri's overwhelming passion. We see it again in one of his later performances in Russia. Yuri idly brings up how good Katsudan is to his grandfather. Again, go check out that other video essay after this. And his grandfather's baffled. The idea of Katsudan is so strange he rejects the idea. And then following up on it, when it's Yuri's turn to compete, his grandfather isn't able to be there.
じいちゃんに見てもらうことでアガペ完成すると思ったのに
It's important to note that this isn't Yuri's grandfather snubbing his grandson or choosing to not show up out of any sort of malice or anything like that. Life just got in the way. He can't be there to support his grandson. And Yuri's performance is flawless as always, but he's still unsatisfied. He knows his performance lacks the heart that Yuri's did, and it gnaws at him. He even loses that stage to JJ, who will come up later on. This is why Mickey is in the story. Mickey is an overly protective brother, constantly threatening anyone who shows any amount of interest in his sister. She's being suffocated from being the only emotional support her brother has, and deliberately cuts him off, making it clear that she wants to do her own thing and that he needs to be able to stand on his own. And to his credit, Mickey does. He finds the inner strength to continue on without his sister. He still loves her dearly, but he's coming to terms with the fact that she's an independent person with her own life to live. Again, contrast that with Georgie, who feels so spurned by his lover. Contrast that with Yurio, who was relying on his grandfather to provide him with Agape. Contrast that with Victor and Yuri themselves. This is a lesson that gets discussed in Kabi Nagata's My Solo Exchange Diary Volume 1. She talks about how she relied entirely on her mother for support. She ruminates on how independence means having a lot of different connections that can share the load when it comes to needing emotional support. And that's exactly what Yurio needs to do. The problem is that he's still closed off. His coaches can help only with his technical skill. His fans have him on a pedestal, and I doubt he'd call the other skaters he trains with friends. That's why Otepec is so important.
昨シーズンの世界選手権で俺と一緒に大乗りした時からオーラを感じていたけど、プライベートは謎が多い。
Otepec enrolled in the same junior class as Yurio did, but Yurio never noticed because he was so focused on his own training. After Otepec rescues Yurio from the fan club, they talk about their old class and how Otepec struggled with even the basics that the Russians were teaching. After he leaves, he travels around. He never picks up ballet again, and that's okay. He could have fallen into bitterness and jealousy, but Otepec didn't let that stop him. He kept training and found a way to express himself using techniques only he could do. And he finds fulfillment in that even if he isn't as good as the others, because he has his own way of skating fearlessly. Skating so fearlessly and with such intensity, in fact, that it scares JJ into, well, we'll get to that in a second. His recognition for Yurio's hard work and passion is in stark contrast with everyone else in Yurio's life. It's validation from someone on his own level. It's one thing to have a friend or a family member talk about how proud they are of what you've accomplished. It means a lot, but it means something completely different to have the recognition of your peers. It hits different to have someone you are in direct competition with go, I really like your style, let's be friends. It's love and empathy from a friend that teaches Yurio what agape can be, and he pays it forward. After Yurio locks in his spot with the grand finals, he watches Yuri's routine, watches how Yuri is struggling without Victor at his side, and he gets angry on Yuri's behalf. He wants to see Yuri do better now, as opposed to thinking of Yuri as this sow that's beneath him. After the Russian competition, Yurio meets up with Yuri and shares the special Katsudan that his grandfather created. This kid, who violently and verbally harassed Yuri at the start of the series, has softened, and it's that warm-heartedness that propels Yurio into the lead with his short routine during the grand finals. But that's still not the end of the story, is it?
来シーズンへの抱負をお願いします。
Throughout the series, everyone seems to have something to say about Victor, how he inspired them, how they yearn to see him return to skating, and measuring themselves against the legacy he's created. But what about him? How does he feel about all this? And the problem is, he doesn't have an answer. Towards the end, a year before he announced his hiatus, Victor was burned out. We see him hunched over in the cold, with only his dog for company. He mentions how he spent the past 20 years neglecting his two L's, life and love, and now it's caught up to him. Look at Victor's room in the first episode. It's in cold grayscale, when everything on Yuri's side is bright and full of color. Even at the very start, Yuri mentions that the reason people love Victor skating is because he's always subverting expectations. The audience is always looking forward to how he'll make his next performance bigger and even more unexpected. It calls to mind the series Llamas Wearing Hats, and how by the end, Carl is haunted by a voice that demands more and more. Be more shocking, be more absurdist. It doesn't matter if you can, it's what the audience wants. And Victor is tired of it. Tired in the same way some of YouTube's best known personalities are tired. Tired the same way MatPat and Tom Scott were when they both announced their retirement in 2024, citing burnout and production bloat as major stressors in their lives. Yes, ice skating is a sport. We see how the competitors tweak and maneuver their routines in response to each other to keep up with Yuri, to keep up with JJ, to keep up with each other. They make harder jumps, and when that's not enough, they put those jumps into the back half of their program when they're worth more points, despite the fact that it's stressing and tiring. But ice skating is also a performance. It's an art, and art needs love to live. It needs human feeling. Anything less, and it's no better than a robot. Cold, dead, and without joy. So what do? Create something technically good, but without heart? Retire and give up on something you still cherish? Victor doesn't know. He doesn't have an answer, but he does find one. In episode 10's post-credit stinger of an infamous after party where Yuri got drunk, he and Victor get into a dance-off that ends with Yuri asking him to come to Japan, enjoy his family's hot springs, and be his coach. Given how solemn Victor was at the start of the series, I'm guessing he initially wrote this off as a nothing serious moment. Just a drunken proposal by a small skater he hadn't really noticed. I mentioned how Yuri inspired Kenjiro the same way Victor inspired him, and how Kenjiro reminded Yuri of something important. It's a great framing device for how Victor feels when he sees Yuri pull off his routine. Because that night did spark something. Something he needed Yuri's video to confirm. Something that told Victor this is where he needed to be. This is where he would find his answer. So, being the impulsive, honest to a fault guy that he is, Victor flies to Japan. In Japan, to enjoy a hot spring is to go without clothes or swimsuit. You present yourself as you are, and that's exactly how Yuri formally meets Victor. From the beginning, Victor has been exactly what he said he is, and done exactly what he said he'd do. Yes, he's thoughtless, forgetful, and a little extravagant, but as he begins experiencing a world outside himself, he changes the same way Yuri does. If Yuri's love is symbolically expressed through Katsudon, then that's the point where we get to see more thought put into his words and actions. He's still Victor, but we understand him better. And just as Victor dove into Japanese culture, Yuri starts asking Victor to share things with him, including the sightseeing tour that leads to their engagement rings. Over the course of his competition, these two have hurt each other, helped each other, grown, and supported each other. When Victor gets a call that his dog has choked on something, Yuri tells him to go back to Japan. He'll be fine on his own, even though we see him struggle later on. Yuri still qualifies for the next round, but without Victor, he turns into a massive hug monster, hugging everyone in sight before returning to Japan himself, where he gets to hug the person he really wanted to share his victory with. The rings are brought up a lot, and I don't want to undervalue their symbolism. But even without them, the love between Victor and Yuri is in text, and it is so strong. For some couples, being allowed to express that love, to have a physical representation, to tell everyone what your bond means to each other, is absolutely worth its weight in gold. I wonder what other highly coveted gold object we should talk about. You're probably familiar with pyrite. It's the mineral called fool's gold because it looks just like the real thing until you smash it. Whereas real gold is malleable and will just kind of become black gold, pyrite shatters, and you get to see the dark substance it actually is inside. Adoration is much the same way. It might look like love, but once the pressure builds up, you get to see how much it actually supports you. In the Russian competition, we meet JJ. He's a beloved skater, rock star, multi-threat talent, and he has the skills to go with his ego. Where everyone else has monologues about their inspiration or the people who helped them get to where they're at, JJ's monologue is purely about how he's the best and how there's no way he can fail. The motherfucker has a tramp stamp of his own initials, and I cannot get over this. He's the guy to beat, without a doubt, and he's so confident that he'll win. He proposes to his fiancée with "when he wins the gold." The issue, of course, isn't that he said that. The issue is how casually and flippantly he says it. Unlike with Yuri and Victor, who are currently working through something incredibly serious, there's no weight to JJ's promise, because the reality is that there's nothing at stake for him. He's assumed things will work out. He's bought into his own hype. For all the adoration his fans give him, for all the belief he had the competition in the bag, the pressure cracks JJ just like pyrite. He doesn't have the emotional support Yurio has, or the single-minded passion that drove Yuri, and his bravado erodes like a house built on the sand the second that Otepec drives the fear into him. It's mentioned that JJ involves himself in every step of his routine. He does his own music, sings his own songs, and that's really cool. He says that he values the collaboration between his performance and his music, but that doesn't really leave room for collaboration or trust between him and someone else. It doesn't leave room for the trust that Yuri and Yurio worked on with Victor and Otepec and their friends and their family and everyone else that they have touched with to create their routines. JJ's trying to reach the top purely on his own. And while that might work for a time, life is not a solo challenge. You can't get by purely on your own ego, lest you fall to the hubris. Even when his parents, his fans, cheer for him, tried to show their support, he brushes it off, saying, "No, I got this. This is JJ style." He's trying to reassure himself with the lie that he doesn't need others, that he doesn't need friends or his loved ones or his family, that this is all him. But you do. You need others. You need friends, loved ones, family. People who will love you honestly and whom you can love in return. You need Eros and Agape and all the other forms of love that aren't put to name in this series. Eros and Agape are not the only forms of love that were named by the Greeks. For the purposes of this essay, they are two of the main ones that I am looking at, but there are so many other kinds. There's hospitality, there's familial, and there's another one that I want to touch on. This is why Yurio is in the intro sequence with Yuri and Victor. This is why Yuri and Yurio share the same name. All three of our main skaters have figured out how to turn their passion and love into something sustainable, with the people they care about most. Yurio isn't upset. He has family, friends, maybe even more than friends. Yurio's found his fulfillment, and that lets him create something beautiful. And that is what Yuri's freestyle routine and accompanying score, Yuri on Ice, is symbolic of. This is an example of philautia, or self-love. Yuri has always had the support of his friends and loved ones. Yuko's family owning an ice rink gave him a place to practice. It gave him a place where he could express himself without hiding away. His parents are supportive, he has a great teacher, but he still lacked for confidence. When Victor asks Yuri what sort of music he wants to use for the freestyle routine, Yuri bashfully admits that he had his coach pick all the music. He remarks how the music he'd gotten from his college acquaintance was supposed to represent his career as a skater, which it does in a flimsy, non-committal way. But that changes. At the very start of the series, while the commenters are speculating on Victor's possible retirement, they note that Yuri wasn't his usual self. Yuri was already competing at the same competitions Victor was. He was already skilled enough to make it to the grand finals. But this time, he's no longer second-guessing himself. Here, in the finals, Yuri skates. He knows himself better, and he can honestly determine what he can and can't do. He doesn't have JJ's puffed-up ego, and he's not self-deprecating himself like before. He's quietly confident in front of the crowd, determined in front of his loved ones, and fearlessly challenging himself to attempt his most difficult routine yet. Not just the day before. Yuri was hiding underneath the sheets, begging for Victor to come save him. He was still clinging to Victor the way that Mickey clung to his sister, the way that Georgie clung to his ex, and his Eros suffered for it. He and Victor have a fight. Victor doesn't want Yuri to retire. He thinks Yuri's skating is beautiful, at one point saying that the reason he loves Yuri's skating is because Yuri feels like he's creating music with his body when he skates. But at the same time, Yuri doesn't want Victor to give up competitive skating. He sees how Victor looks at all these top skaters. He sees the fire being relit under Victor's skin. He wants to hold on to Victor, but he needs to let Victor go. And he needs to show Victor that he can stand on his own now. He's idolized Victor ever since he was a kid. His room was plastered with Victor's posters. He started skating because he adored Victor as an idol, but all of that has changed. Yuri can stand on his own now, and he skates to show Victor that he's learned everything there is for Victor to teach him, and then some. It culminates in pulling off Victor's trademark quad flip, and it's perfect. Love isn't just giving or selfish. If love is the flourish, then it needs to be equitable. Yuri finishes his routine with panning shots that catch the glitter of their matching rings, showing that they are no longer just coach and student. They are equals. They are partners that can selfishly say, skate with me, which they do in duos, performing and sharing the thing that brought them together. Whenever I watch Yuri's routine, I can't help but remember a scene from the Fruits Basket remake, where Yuki talks about how acceptance from others makes it easier to believe there are good things about yourself. I think Yuri on Ice agrees with that sentiment. I've struggled with self-acceptance and telling myself that whatever I make is good enough. I've struggled because this whole time, I've had too much of my self-worth wrapped up in whatever it is I wanted to make. In a sense, I was afraid of poisoning the well. If anyone saw something I made and hated it, they'd never give me another chance, and I'd lose their confidence forever. I fell into the trap of trying to make what I wanted as pristine as possible and stopped moving forward. Moving in with and marrying my partners has helped me move past that. I don't need to constantly hold my hand up and shout, pick me, because I've already been picked by people who love and cherish me. Gaining that emotional security is the reason why I can create again. It's why you have a video to watch right now. The adoration of thousands is nothing compared to the love from a few. That's not to say that love is a cure-all. It's not an elixir that magically cures all of your pain and trauma, but it is powerful and strong enough to help you carry on in spite of those things. And it comes in all shapes and forms. Maybe your love isn't Eros. Maybe your love is waking your partner up because you just had an epiphany. Maybe it's acting like a paperweight in bed. Maybe it's sobbing when you see them at the airport because you know they're going to be leaving in just a couple of weeks and you're not ready for it when you just got together. Maybe it's not constant I love yous, but how quickly they jump to your side when they see you're upset. Maybe it's quipping and jabbing because you trust each other with your vulnerability. Maybe it's doing something they love for a change because you see how much joy it sparks and you just want to be as greedy as you can with it for as long as you have time together. Maybe it's being on the phone with them for hours because they're scared. Maybe it's buying them something they need but can't afford themselves. Maybe it's flying across the country to be with them. And maybe it's just a small reminder that they're on your mind. It's so easy to be cynical. It's easy to be bitter. It's easy to seal yourself off from others and stew in pain. It's harder to be vulnerable, to be honest, and to make real connections with other people. But if you can do that, then you'll find something beautiful. You'll find your own form of love.
Yuri!
This is supposed to be the part where I talk to you and I ask you to do the like and subscribe thing, but really, I'm just glad that you watched it all the way to the end. I want to continue making video essays about the things that I love, why I love them, and just sharing that with all of you. And I think that's a big part of why Yuri on Ice really struck a chord with me. I would easily put it into my top 10 series. You know how Mal has that whole ranking score of like on scale of 1 to 10? This one is easily a 9 for me. It's an absolutely beautiful show. It's a short series with really tight, really efficient writing, and it uses its time to communicate an idea that's honestly too abstract to really put into words the way that I just tried to do. But finding the words for it and communicating that is just so much fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that you'll stick around for more of my ideas and thoughts. So, until next time, we'll see you around. Same hero time, same hero channel. Good night, everybody.